Right, good morning and welcome to the Executive Member Decision Session for Economy and Strategic Planning. Just going through the agenda as printed. Declarations of interest. I don't have any that are not already included on the register of interests. Okay, so that brings us to item 2, which is minutes of the last meeting. Here, and I'm happy to agree those as an accurate record. And those physically. Right, so that brings us on to item 3. I understand there are no public participation registrations to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So that brings us quickly on to agenda item 4, inclusive growth update. And Simon Brereton, you're going to cover that.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Waller. So this is the latest in a series of updates on inclusive growth in York that we presented to your decision sessions. As we emerge from the COVID pandemic, we can return to our focus on using the Inclusive Growth Fund, and we'll say a little bit more of that in a second. But we've also in recent months had the publication of the government's Levelling Up white paper, which really sets out a national approach to the whole levelling up agenda, which I think we can see maps quite clearly onto what we would talk about in terms of inclusive growth. So we've summarised in the report to you the approach that we've taken on levelling up in terms of the Great British Rail headquarters bid, which is one of those pieces of government investment which is being judged against the levelling up white paper, and set out our current thinking in terms of York and levelling up. We've then also updated the inclusive growth evidence base, which we presented to you a number of times previously, and then given an update on the 8 projects in the Inclusive Growth Fund. In terms of the approach to levelling up, what we're saying is that while York is a relatively strong economy in the region, in fact, if you look at, for instance, GVA per hour worked, which is a very widely used indicator of productivity, York is actually the strongest in across the region. If you look at wages, we're also at the top of the regionally at the top, but for a city whose economy is the strongest in Yorkshire and the North East, if you look at us and compare us with the South East, which is what the levelling up agenda is about, we're actually only at average, and that's not helpful for York, and it's not helpful for the wider economy. So the intention is to set out a clearer picture in terms of how York improves both of those measures, and levelling up improves the economy of York. Levelling up in York shouldn't just be judged about how we compare with our nearest neighbours, but as I say, is really all about how we compare with London and the South East. I'm sure we'll have more to say on that in terms of the economic strategy, and also in terms of, for instance, what we'll need to do shortly in terms of setting out a prospectus for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, all of which relates to that levelling up agenda. So I say we've summarised the current approach for your consideration, Councillor. The inclusive growth evidence base shows a lot of the data behind what I've just been saying, and shows that we continue to be relatively strong. There's still a huge amount of work in part-time roles, which are in the lower paid sectors of the economy, and also highlight some of the challenges in terms of housing costs, which are beyond the immediate remit of economy and planning, but clearly house prices are really important, and the cost of rentals in York are a very important factor in terms of household disposable incomes, which are a really important measure also in terms of how the city's doing. Moving on to the detail of the projects in the Inclusive Growth Fund. There, I say there are 8 projects there summarised in the table at paragraph 8 in the report, and we go through the detail of each of those. All are complete or in progress, with the exception of the Greening Our Retail Estate item, which has been on hold during the pandemic, and perhaps we need to move back to thinking how we can better use that funding. But I'm pleased to see the Poverty Commission work being established by York CVS. We've done a lot of work. The second line in the budget around community hubs was a really useful part of our response in COVID, and helped support work through community hubs across the city. Community job fairs are actively being progressed by York Learning. The vocational training that I know you were so keen to get established is currently in progress. So 10 young people with York College at the moment on that. The Independent Retail Growth Fund is partly spent, but you'll know that the focus that we put on supporting independent retail and micro businesses throughout the pandemic has been a huge factor in York recovering so strongly from the pandemic. Now that the substantial amounts of government funding we've had have gone, that what remains in the Independent Retail Growth Fund will be an important way to carry forward some of that work, certainly through the rest of the year. We've begun our work on mental health and wellbeing with York St John, and held a really successful event in York Business Week last November. And more remains to be done there, and our engagement on the York Economic Strategy, particularly with hard to reach groups, is currently underway. There's a piece of work active at the moment with some focus groups happening with a wide selection of groups within within the York population. So a summary there of how we're doing with the Inclusive Growth Fund. So I think I'll stop that there.
All right, thank you for that, Simon. Just a couple of questions and clarifications. Start with paragraph 14. Since our last report on inclusive growth in February 2021, the UK economy has encountered a number of distinct economic challenges. That's certainly an understatement of what has been going on. And I think that the cost of living pressures, the cost of fuel pressures will have a significant impact on the York economy and the national economy. So I think the work that was done by all of the teams during the pandemic to respond to the various grants that were channeled through local authorities, I pay tribute to the amount of effort that went in there to ensure that money was transferred as quickly as possible, but also factoring in the York way of doing business to support the wide range of businesses, not just those who shout loudest, but actually recognising the significant number of people in the city who are employed in small and medium enterprises. I think in the intervening period, signing up for the Good Business Charter indicates our commitment to good pay in employment, and it's vital that that work continues and feeds into this range of projects. So I note the York Poverty Commission in progress via York CVS. I hope that produces a significant amount of evidence base that can be utilised with work the council does, but also work that many partners do. And in terms of the community hubs, those were invaluable during the pandemic and showed that it was essential to reverse the community centre closure programme that was brought in prior to 2015. In terms of greening our retail estate, appreciate that during the COVID pandemic that was put on hold. There's clearly been an interest in sustainable and greening market, Newgate Market, and just to clarify that would be counting as part of the city's commercial estate, so that could be looked at. So if you could take that up with the market, I know I've been in touch with them and some of the market traders, so I think that would utilise that work. On the community jobs fairs, note that there have been a number of job fairs recently, and recognising that whilst there are a significant number of vacancies and a level of unemployment in the city, there is a bit of a mismatch there, and so having those linked with guidance on how people access benefits, childcare, those hurdles that could be overcome to enable access to jobs. I appreciate that a lot of small companies really are struggling to get some vacancies filled. If we can work together on that, and Alison, that you and your team have done a lot there. So I think it's recognising that this is about a range of activities in the communities. I appreciate there's big job fairs at the Railway Institute and some of the big hotels, but this is very much community based and talking to small businesses. In terms of vocational training, I did see some of that at York College, so I think that's it's been a very positive step forward, and look forward to that continuing. It was a good pilot. The Independent Retail Growth Fund, as I appreciate that with the additional restriction grants that were available to keep businesses running, that filled that role. But in order to complete the expenditure, it would be useful to have another round of round tables with the various traders associations in the city, recognising I am a member for ACOM Alive. That would be a meeting scheduled by officers, and would take in view the comments from a wide range from across the city. I think demonstrating that, as I'm frequently reminded by the Federation of Small Businesses, Carolyn, there are businesses outside the city centre, so this would demonstrate that. Mental health, wellbeing and employment, clearly that is very much an issue that is on the national agenda, and grateful for the work that has been done locally to recognise that within the workforce. And I think that the work that York St John University have started on this is important for businesses to be able to tap into, because there's a lot of talk about it, but what do you actually do to deliver that? I think having an organisation that can provide tailor-made solutions is vital. And obviously the final item is the York Economic Strategy consultation, which is ongoing, and will engage with a very wide range of organisations in the forthcoming months. So I think the points that were made about benchmarking us against the south of England is an important one. It was interesting to see government put in print its views on what levelling up was. It was an initial first go at it. The principles of some of the civil service jobs relocating and that being linked to the raise of aspiration with young people in the various regions. I think that's an important feature. So I think ensuring that we are in a strong position there, and certainly with York Central, we are. So I think that there's been good progress made and detailed in the report, and I'm grateful for the work that officers have put in to delivering this. So thank you very much, Simon. Right, okay, that brings us on to agenda item 5. Alison.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. So this is the update on apprenticeships, and just for clarity, it covers the 6 months to March 2022, but it's important to note that the figures around apprenticeship starts for the region nationally. When we talk about the full year data, we're talking to July 2021, and then the first 2 quarters of 21-22 take us up to the end of January. So that was just a piece of context. The overall picture is one of, can I say, positive maintenance? So in terms of the numbers of starts in the city, for the full year 2021, we're up 3% on the year prior. And I think that's a testament to all of the good work of the council's teams, but actually citywide efforts with partners to maintain the profile of apprenticeships throughout the pandemic. And because we do have that lag in the data, we're only starting to see kind of the fruit of that work now. For the first 2 quarters of the current year, we've actually at 72% starts compared with the full year prior. And particularly positive is actually for our 16 to 18-year-old starts, we're at 95% of the full year previous. So you can see that actually some of the targeted work, particularly by the skills teams, working with our secondary and FE partners, and then when we come on to it, the actual work of the council and our own approach to new entrants into the workforce and upskilling is really helping to support that recovery locally. So talking about the council's own utilisation, we actually have 79 active apprentices right across the council, and you'll see some examples of the types of standards and levels that they're undertaking. But that's actually 49% more than we did it in September, so the last time we reported. And again, that translates through our own utilisation and also our levy transfer scheme, which again, I'll come on to in a moment. We've actually utilised quite a bit more levy compared to that period previous for that training and that development. So in terms of the local market, we're tracking around 180 to 200 vacancies within a 15-mile radius of York each week. And you'll see in the paper, there's a breakdown of kind of the levels that they're at and the different types of sectors. Again, what's heartening is we have a number of level 2 kind of entry level roles and vacancies available into some of those key sectors for York, which align with the sectors in the skills strategy for the city. But also, as in March, I think it was around 40% of the vacancies were level 3. So again, that's for that slight progression route, or for people that may be a changing tack and want to pick up an apprenticeship, there's opportunities there too. The activity in particular of the skills team and the impartial apprenticeship hub, we've got some examples within the paper around our social media campaigns, how we're really supporting local businesses and individuals and connecting the two through events. So during National Apprenticeship Week, we were a key partner in a regional event that actually took place here in York at the racecourse. But also we had our own apprenticeship recruitment event, particularly for our year 11 and year 13 leavers at York High School. So out in a community setting, but very much for the city. And you'll see in the paper that we talk about the real tangible results from that. So, you know, some really good news. We've got somebody taking up an apprenticeship in joinery. We've got some work experience opportunities and some other interviews. In terms of the council's utilisation and the levy transfer scheme itself, you'll see the section that starts to talk about the levy funds. And it's always really important to remember that there's a number of factors that can affect that levy fund and how it fluctuates. The overall message really from this paper and the keen work that we've been doing as a council since you approved the levy transfer strategy in November 2020, since we put a dedicated team in place, is that actually we're having a positive impact. And in terms of utilisation of levy versus what's expiring and going back, that there's a really strong message there. So what we've actually done so far is commit £160,000 over a maximum of 51 months to support 9 businesses with 27 apprenticeships in the city. And that's through that levy transfer scheme. What we're now looking to do and what the paper asks is for an approval of an evolution of that levy transfer criteria. And the main reason for that is to make it easier for businesses. You'll recall that initially we trialled a window targeted at certain sectors, but actually working with businesses over this last financial year, we know that there's not necessarily a static business planning cycle for every business in every sector. So let's keep that open for a financial year with the caveat that we will continue to monitor up to the 20% of levy transfer that we permit. And we'll communicate with businesses and we will target particular campaigns at particular times, but let's make it easy so people can come to us at their point of need. And in the same vein, what we want to do is say to businesses, and you'll see the suggested criteria at Annex 1, think about your workforce development needs. And if you can, we're looking to help you prioritise kind of those higher level technical, STEM and green skills for your existing workforce, but also within priority sectors, those new entry-level roles that we've touched on that are so important in the city. And if you can say that that's what your approach is doing, then absolutely come and talk to us. If you're not sure, we're here to help. But it's about keeping it open. And again, to make sure that it isn't just first past the post, first come, first served. Yeah. What we're looking to do is say, any businesses that are coming to us to fund more than 5 apprenticeships, or a total value of more than £30,000 within that one financial year, whether that be one request or multiple, then we'll just pause and we'll have that conversation with you about the needs of your business and how this might be the best approach to support. But it also means that other businesses across the city, with those targeted campaigns, will have that opportunity to come forward and benefit. And as always, if for any reason our scheme isn't the right scheme for a business, we absolutely signpost them to our partners in the city. And in the paper, you'll see that we reference the regional hub, which by virtue of working in partnership with them, we're actually expanding our support for businesses in the city.
Right, thank you for that, Alison. I think some very strong, positive news there. So grateful for the work that's been put in by the team, and I appreciate your comments that it does take time for the initiative to produce the results because you have to do all the groundwork first. But I appreciate all of the strong links with businesses that have been established, and useful to demonstrate that £160,000 of support is staying in the city and being invested in local residents through apprenticeships and supporting the businesses that they work for. So that's a very good news story. So I'm very happy to agree the evolution of this scheme. I think it's worked very well, and I think it's worked in partnership with businesses and providers. And as you say, that if a business comes forward and there's a more appropriate scheme for them, that you signpost them to that. It's a very collaborative approach, but I think it builds on the inclusive growth principles of supporting a wide range of apprenticeships, and getting the message across that whilst many will be 16 to 18, people can enter apprenticeships throughout their working life. So I appreciate the work that's gone into getting the position where the council's got a 79 apprentices, which is a significant step forward, and a very good message that the council is leading by example and ensuring that there's investment in the workforce of the future. So thank you very much, Alison, and very happy to support the recommendation. Thank you. Right, so that brings us on to item 6, which is urgent business. I haven't received any, and therefore I bring the meeting